Lumo is an early-stage ag tech company built on the insight that wine grape growers already have great irrigation plans, but traditionally, no way of validating that they're actually irrigating to plan.
We're not telling them to do anything different. We're not coming in saying, oh, you water too much, or you water too little, or you need to change your program. We're just saying, you're already the smartest guy in the field. You already know what you're doing. Like, how do we just make sure that you have confidence that actually happens? And when we do that, that's when we see the eyes light up.
Co-founder Devon Wright says the company has a lot of room to expand in the future to different crops and geographies, but they've made a strategic decision to start with a narrow focus.
Make 100 people absolutely love you and your product, and then you can grow. And that's just like through and through the culture I have in the company at Lumo. That's how I think about building businesses.
Devon also shares about his experiences this past year with AI and why he's pushing everyone in the company to go all in finding ways to incorporate more of it into every aspect of their business.
And I just told every person, like this isn't about me or you. I don't think any of us are going to be able to work again in 2 years to 5 years if we don't understand how to use this thing. It's that strong.
Product strategy, customer service, and embracing AI with Lumo's Devon Wright on today's Future of Agriculture podcast. Hello, fellow Ag Nerd. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Future of Agriculture. My name is Tim Hammerich, and every week you and I get to hear from the founders, farmers, innovators, investors, the people shaping the future of the ag industry. Really great episode for you here today with Devon Wright of Lumo. This Lumo story, I think, is really interesting for a number of reasons. One of which is that they've just managed to take on venture capital, but still remain very customer focused, serving a very specific market within agriculture. As you're about to hear, they have resisted the temptation that has led to the demise, in my opinion, of so many ag tech companies that are trying to be for everyone and rapidly expand to as many crops and acres as possible. But Lumo is really focused exclusively for now on wine grapes, and for a long time, only wine grapes in the areas of Sonoma and Napa Counties in California, which is where Devon lives. Also, I think Devon is just a really interesting dude. I'll read his bio here to give you a little bit more of a sense of what I'm referring to. Devon Wright is an entrepreneur, investor, and the co-founder and CEO of Lumo, where he and his team are on a mission to massively improve food and freshwater security by giving farmers the best irrigation system in the world. He sold his first startup, a local marketing platform for restaurants, to Yelp in 2017. When he's not helping growers dial in their irrigation precision or providing advice to other early-stage startups, he's spending time with his wife and 3 young daughters on their little farm in Occidental, California, or writing cheesy sci-fi romance. I'm going to let Devon explain more of his background as I drop into the conversation here. I think you're really going to enjoy this one with Devon Wright of Lumo.
I'm from Canada originally. So we had all the fresh water you could ever imagine up there. I grew up basically with my sprinklers running until the winter froze the water. So I would have never thought I would be in water-related technology. But yeah, I basically grew up out there until 2017 when I sold my first startup. I built a tech startup in 2012, and it wasn't related to ag or water at all. It was related to marketing tech. So I ended up selling it to Yelp, which was an amazing experience and luckily got me out here into America. So I moved to California, San Francisco actually as part of that deal. And that was in 2017. And within 2 years, I'd actually moved to rural California where I live now, Occidental. And that was 2019 in the middle of the worst drought in 1,200 years, I think is how they advertised the drought back then. So, I moved to this non-farm kind of guy who thinks fresh water is everywhere, moves to a rural community, plants an orchard, makes friends with a bunch of farmers, and then realizes whoa, not only is fresh water not everywhere and it's hard to find and it's important to take care of it, but its application in farming and its importance to our food system and to our rural communities really struck me hard of whoa, this is people are running out of water on my lane. I mean, I actually ran my well out by over irrigating, by not catching some broken lines and stuff that ended up flooding out my system. And yeah, like the solution's like, okay, well now you go buy truckfuls of water for like 40 cents a gallon and they're 4 weeks backlogged. And I was just like, holy shit, like this is a real problem, and like I'm just this tiny little grower who's like hoping to make some food for my family and my church. And like my friends that I've been meeting and getting to know out in this area, like they're commercial ag, this is their livelihood. They're feeding our community. And to see like all that stress going on was just a big wake up call for me and kind of gave me a new passion for starting another company and a company that hopefully could be involved in supporting farmers and securing our water and our food chain.
And so how did that lead to valve automation? I mean, it seems like a big leap of saying, and this is the problem I always have with water tech, I'll tell you, is like, we talk about water as this major problem, like there's not enough of it, we can't get enough. And then we talk about like a technology that seems like much more on a micro scale. And so like, how did the big problems with water and the conversation you're having lead to like, oh, we need to automate the valve, that's going to help?
That's a wonderful question. And we don't just automate the valve. In fact, that was the big takeaway here is like opening and closing stuff is not the job of an irrigator. And it's also not going to protect your water resources, because what happens if you open the valve and it's into a broken line? That's what happened to me. It was like, I did everything right. I used some little stupid controller that opened the valve and that was supposed to be working, but it wasn't actually working well. It was opened into a broken line. So like, what I learned and what I took away, and actually this is the differentiator for our company, it's pretty simple, is like irrigation is not an open and closing problem, it's a measurement problem through and through. And so we decided to build into a valve a flow meter and pressure sensors and some other sensors, as well as a brain that are live inside the valve, so that the farmer can not only give the valve a command and say, let out this much water and no more, which is obviously a great level up from their current experience, right? They can say to the valve, hey, I want 6 gallons per vine or 10 gallons per tree, go. And the valve will be like, oh, okay, well, there's 2,000 trees downstream. I'll open, I'll measure out that much water, I'll close, right? That's important. But the other thing that's more important is, or equally as important, is tracking the performance of the valve. How's the flow rate versus expectation or versus historical performance? How's the pressures versus the design specs of the system? And when those things are off, that's when the real problems occur, and that's where the real waste can happen.
For audience members that are not irrigators or have never been irrigators, is the flow meter and the pressure sensor going to tell when there's like a busted pipe and it's just kind of going out into the ground? Is that the idea there?
Yeah, exactly. And it's been so much fun to have launched that product in 2022 when AI was still kind of not talked about at all. And the tools for it, for sure, were not very commercially available. And to start collecting all this data on every single valve, every single block, every product we put in the market is just this huge source of data. Like, I think we've got like 100 billion data points now out of our system, which is like every irrigation, every block, every second of flow data, every second of pressure inlet and outlet data, a bunch of soil moisture data, a bunch of pump performance data, RPM data, and it's all at once. And like, that's dumping into this system. And when an irrigation system is working well, they're like highly predictable. The data is extremely, tight. For example, like an 800 gallon a minute flow rate through one of our valves on a good, healthy block might have like a 0.1% deviation in flow rate. So like super, super tight performance. So if even a single like riser breaks, like a one line is chewed through by a coyote or gets tugged off by a tractor, you'll see this spike in the flow rate, and then you'll see this drop in the pressure, and that fingerprint is recognizable. And there's dozens of these types of fingerprints, for every kind of issue that you can see, from pumps malfunctioning to, an extra valve being opened in a set and reducing pressure within the system beyond a healthy limit, pressure reducers or other components malfunctioning, filters clogging. There's just like so much there's so many issues that can occur. And now with AI, you can kind of dump this data into the system, and a mix of data and also customer input and feedback to help us tag the faults. The AI can actually now start to learn and predict like when things are happening, or if something is seen, it can kind of look back and say, hey, that looks like this thing. You should get someone out there with these tools and fix it. So it's really fun. Like I sound like such a nerd now that I hear myself saying this, but I mean, it's just great to have that data, and what we can do to level up the farm operation is just getting more and more exciting.
It is cool. And don't worry, we encourage nerding out here on the show. What seems to really get a grower excited about this? I think I can probably intuit this, but I don't want to assume too much. So obviously the grower's not going to be excited about 100 billion data points, right? They're going to be excited about something else that they've had problems with in the past that they see relief for. What do you hear most often with that?
Yeah, we call it closing the execution gap. So and this is pretty much universal. Farmers are very good at what they do. They know their crops and their farms very, very well. They have good systems, education, sensors, intuition around what their crop needs. And so most people don't know this, but farmers are like pretty scientific in how they think about that and how they prescribe that. Like, it's very common for growers to say in the wine grape community, for example, like they irrigate by gallons per vine. So they do a lot of testing and sensing to create these plans each week to say, like, I want 5 gallons per vine in this block and 2 gallons per vine in that block and 6 gallons per vine in that block. And citrus is very similar, very precise. Berries for sure, even more so. Even apple growers and others, I mean, especially with like heat suppression and cooling and other things, they're very conscious of like, okay, we need to achieve these moisture levels. We need to achieve this target. Every single grower I've ever spoke to tells me that they do that. And then every single grower I've ever spoke to tells me it's a black box on the other side. Once they give the plan, I'm like, wow, that's incredible that you have that much of a plan. You must have some data coming back to let you know if it actually happened. And that's when they're just like, nope, nothing. And it's like, wow, really? Like, well, are you confident it's happening? It's like, absolutely not. Like tractors pull our stuff, people, things get run over. The animals are constantly chewing stuff, running over things. Pressure reducers malfunction, pumps malfunction. We run out of water, filters clog, you name it. I mean, it's endless, right? And so that's the gap, right? And when we show them our data on this block level data, every valve, every single time you irrigate with us, it's like, I want you to do X. And we're just like, boom, here's this amazing report card on that irrigation. Here's all the data. Here's how it went in real time. Basically, we judge ourselves by how tight did we get you to your plan. And we usually actually run the system for a couple weeks or whatever off. We just let them do their plan. We just track the data. We say, you irrigate the way you would have irrigated. Have a guy go out with an ATV, manually open it for 9 hours, come back, and we'll show you what your system was doing versus your plan. And that's usually off by, significant double-digit percentages. It's not uncommon for it to be more than 10%, 20%. We often see irrigations that are outside of the plan by 50, 60%. Yeah, huge amounts, right? And again, like, no one honestly is that surprised. They're kind of frustrated. Sometimes, honestly, they start to blame us. Like, well, it must be that stupid valve. And then we diagnose and we show them the data, and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. Like that set was too big. We should probably be pulling that back. But then we have all these tools where we start to run the Lumo program, use the scheduling, the volume-based irrigation, the AI system for leak detection, and solving problems and faults in the field. Our pump automation, integrating all that. Then we start to close that gap. And that's when they're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, because we're not telling them to do anything different. We're not coming in saying, oh, you water too much or you water too little or you need to change your program. We're just saying, you're already the smartest guy in the field. You already know what you're doing. Like, how do we just make sure that you have confidence it actually happens? And when we do that, that's when we see the eyes light up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And what type of outcomes do they experience from that? Is that a boost in yield, improvements in sugar content for these wine grapes? What are those outcomes?
Those are the ones we've been really thrilled to see people having confidence in. We rarely start there when we pitch people because people are generally quite skeptical that you're going to improve yields. So we tend to try to start with like, look, worst case, our pricing set up that like, if you can save some labor, maybe you can get some guys out of the field to do some higher value strategic work instead of turning valves open and close or looking, driving up and down lines looking for broken rodent shoes. Like you can probably break even on us pretty quick. But then throughout the season, our job is to like show them that upside. Like, hey, how's that, your plan is getting tighter and tighter. Is that achieving the goals you had in mind? Is that giving you the better yields? And, when this was a block that was running at 50% to plan, now it's at 98. How are you feeling about that? Are you seeing less pest load? Are you seeing less passes having to go by and trim the trellis? Are you seeing better outcomes? And honestly, yeah, they do. They do see that. And of course they do, because that's why they had the plan in the first place. Again, we don't have to sell them on anything. It's like, if you had a plan, it's because you think you're going to make more yield, or you think you're going to have better quality, or you think you have some strategy and you have some outcome in mind. You're probably right. Let's just make sure the plan comes true. And if it does, I bet you your results will follow. And they almost always do, right? Because these farmers know what the hell they're doing.
Right. They came up with those numbers for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's their plan.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. One of the defining characteristics of Lumo, at least in my mind, is your current focus on grapes, on vineyards. How much of that came from like, hey, I'm here, I'm in Occidental, it's a great market locally, it's kind of what people are growing, versus like, actually this problem sort of uniquely suited to vineyard managers?
So funny enough, the focus actually came from my experience in Silicon Valley, my experience working with Jeremy Stoppelman, who's a fantastic entrepreneur, and his philosophy, and I think this is pretty common startup philosophy for a lot of the great entrepreneurs in tech, is basically like, you have no right to go outside of a small TAM that you think your product can work for. You have no right leaving that market until it's working, until that market is like taking over. Because if you can't even do that in your own backyard, if you can't even do that for one crop type in one region, what right do you have to believe that you have product market fit? What right do you have to believe you have efficiencies built into the system to support larger regional plays? What right do you think you have to even know some of what the needs are from these other crop types and regions? So I think Gary Tan actually, just like yesterday or today, I just saw this on Twitter, but he said, make 100 people absolutely love you and your product, and then you can grow. And that's just like through and through the culture I have in the company at Lumo. That's how I think about building businesses. So 2 reasons to pick the local area we did, the Napa Sonoma region. One is, from a market value perspective, even though it's a pretty small region, the crop value, that might be the highest crop value in like concentration in America, right? I mean, I think it is. I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure Napa and Sonoma is the highest value of crops on a revenue density basis. So why wouldn't you start there? What a wonderful place to start, right? I mean, they've got this wonderful crop. They have to take care of it because it's high risk, right? When it's that high value, they really have to take care of it. They do have a little bit more capital to play with, and they're right next door. So it's like, if you can't make that work, Lumo, you don't deserve to be elsewhere. And actually, I do believe that make 100 people love you. That was our target. Our target was to have 100 farms adopt us within 2 years, have zero churn, to hit $1 million in revenue. We didn't get all the way there. We got very, very close. And then we did all that. And then that was like, okay, now you have a right to go to the Central Coast. Now you have a right to go to Washington. Now you have a right to explore Australia. Now you have a right to go into Canada. You have a right to look, and even still, we're like very constrained on ourselves. We tend to want our customers to pull us into new regions as opposed to just going after revenue. And I think this principle is highly undervalued in ag tech. In Silicon Valley, this is typically done because there's marketplace dynamics where like that kind of density and that liquidity is so important to create that you tend to have to focus like that to generate liquidity, and then you can take that model and scale it. But even though this isn't a marketplace, farmers are so word of mouth. They're so want to see high levels of support. They want to see your focus, and supporting them across such big regions, such physical footprints is just very, very hard to do. It actually just ends up that way of thinking has worked really well here. And farmers tell me like they can't count the number of times they've been burned by people that just moved on too quickly before they had 100 people love them.
Oh yeah, it's such a common story. And my impression always was that companies felt the need to chase larger and larger TAMs for investors to keep raising investor money. So I mean, has that been a problem at all for you?
Luckily, Fall Line Capital is our biggest investor, and they are a farm landowner, so they know what they want. And when they heard me share the idea of this regional focus, we call it a regional takeover model. They're pretty understanding, and they gave us a lot of patience on that. Same thing with Active Impact, really great investor. They've been in ag tech, they've done a lot of sustainability investing, so they could get a sense of that. So our investors have been okay, but I've probably, in my fundraising to date, I've probably spoke to 200 investors, and I would say by and large, more than 90% of them, all the ones that said no, it was because they were like, that's not big enough. That TAM's never gonna, you can't just do wine grapes. I'm like, I'm not just gonna do wine grapes. I'm gonna do other stuff, but we have to validate this. And they're like, oh no, call me when you're in almonds. And it's just like that pressure to tell a story that you have all this acreage and that you can get revenue really quickly. I think that's the wrong metric for ag tech. Revenue and total acres honestly don't matter to me. It's like density of revenue matters a lot. Churn, net revenue retention matters a lot. And dollars per acre that you're serving or that you're capturing matters a lot to me. Those are the metrics we run the business off. We don't even think about total acreage.
Well, I mean, it's definitely encouraging to hear that you are finding, although they're in the minority, it sounds like you are finding investors who understand that. You know, you chose a market in wine grapes that has always been cyclical, and in the last couple of years has been in a down cycle. How has that affected, Lumo's ability to execute this plan?
Luckily, we've been doing great. Would it have been easier? Yep. Could we be bigger? Yep. But our customers have been very resilient and very much the type to invest when you're at the bottom. We have Wente as a customer. They're fifth generation. Their family lived through Prohibition. Like, you can imagine the resilience in that family, right? Like, so they have a really good instinct around thinking long term. I use them as an example, but I think that's true about the Jackson family, who is a customer. That's true about a lot of these big Delicato, Treasury. I mean, this is probably true for all farmers. You benefit from this family and generational way of looking at the business. So even though it's certainly more difficult, like capital budgets are majorly constrained, they are planning to be here 20 years from now and 50 years from now. And so they're thinking about how to keep investing, and they invest in the downtime. And they're also, what's beneficial about our product is it's an efficiency play. So it's like, man, if you can't control your top line and your top line's hurting, then what can you control? Well, you can control your expenses. You can become more efficient. You can de-risk your strategy, I guess. De-risk your strategy, reduce your costs. And that's really what we offer, right? We offer de-risk your strategy, risks to yield that come from bad irrigations, have confidence that's what's happening, reduce labor. And that's been a story that's resonating, especially with the labor challenges, and with like people being deported. That's pretty spooky. 50% probably of people, I think I read somewhere 51% of California ag labor was undocumented. And so imagine the risk you're thinking of, like, whoa, what would happen if half my irrigators couldn't come to work? So there's, sadly, I think, a tailwind around that's also gave us some momentum. But yeah, it's been hard. We've had to be really creative on marketing for sure. How do we be very tight in explaining that? How do we do pricing such that we can help people with limited capital budgets, maybe spread out payments into operating budgets and so on? So yeah, it's tough.
How about, a hardware solution versus a software solution? I'm of the opinion, in agriculture at least, if you're going to be a pure software play, you better really think through the hardware. Where are you going to bolt on to hardware? I think solutions delivery in agriculture almost has to come from something tangible. And I know there's exceptions, but anyway, so I think that's an interesting part of your story here. How has that been versus kind of a pure software play?
Man, you're so right. And we spent a lot of time early thinking about that. In fact, I was very afraid to build a valve. I never would have if I didn't have the co-founder that I have, which is a fellow named Henry Halimi. And he's in his 70s and is this incredible water inventor who has like so much experience with supply chains and manufacturing and industrial design and water tech. And his last company was called Flow, which was a valve that goes in the residential use case. It's like a smart valve for your home. So I was like, oh, we'll do another controller. And he's like, if you do another controller, we're all dead. Like, we're not doing that. Like, we have to have the courage to go look at what's not working and build the entire thing that's not working to work. And that's going to require like saying to farmers, these valves that you have in the field don't do what you need them to do. And if you want to get the human out of it, you're not going to do that by band-aid bolting a bunch of stuff onto the existing infrastructure that was never designed for technology in the first place. We're going to have to be willing to do what Nest was willing to do, which was look at a Honeywell thermostat and say, this wasn't designed to do what the future expects of Honeywell or of thermostats. The future expects different of thermostats. It has to be IoT first, software first, has to have better sensors and better reactivity and better interfacing and better design, better, look, if you ever read the book Build, it's just such a great journey through that, like, what it takes to have the courage to make that statement. And my co-founder, Henry, made that statement and made us stick to that. And that was a really smart idea. That was a very, very smart idea for what you just said. I think it's really hard to deliver to a farmer if you're trying to build a software only thing, or if you're trying to bolt on, aftermarket components to maybe make something that's dumb kind of smart. It's not a great solution.
Yeah, I think it's got to be baked in, and I think we've seen too many examples of good ideas that just couldn't get traction because it wasn't kind of a full solution. It was just trying to add on to something that wasn't working. What about reliability? I'm sure that was one of your concerns with hardware, is like, boy, it's going to be out there in the elements, and are we going to be out there fixing valves? Is that going to take all of our capital just kind of fixing valves? It sounds like your co-founder, who I think is from you said kind of plumbing tech background. How are you guys able to address the reliability challenge in agriculture?
Yeah, luckily he has that background. That goes a long way, obviously. But farms are so different. You cannot build a test environment for a farm. It's not possible. It's like everywhere you go, there's a new thing. There's this valve's down a hill. It's going to be sitting on 100 psi of pressure. Did you test for 100 psi pressure in the lab? You're like, damn it, no, I've never seen a valve at 100 psi pressure. It was only ever at 80. We only ever tested at 80. And then you get a leaky diverter, and then you're like, okay, back to the lab. But again, luckily my partner just has this insane network and life experience, so he can react extremely quickly to that. So, in one way, we were uniquely positioned to be reliable enough. And then, man, I'll give thanks to the farmers, because we have learned so much about our product and added to the resilience of our product failing live on the farm. So today we sell into the Okanagan, Washington, Central Coast, North Coast, South Coast, and that's our 5 markets. So if I'd had that footprint a year ago, we'd be dead. The problems that occurred that we couldn't have even seen coming, or maybe we could have seen them coming, but we didn't at the time, would have not been solved in time if we had to get on a plane and fly to Washington to try to fix the things that broke. But luckily, it was right here, and I hired 4 people that were living in Napa and Sonoma. I lived in Sonoma. We had 2 salespeople in that area, and we spent our entire time driving around trucks, making sure we knew things were working. And when they weren't, we didn't let the farmer suffer. We went and, we'd irrigate the field ourselves and then fix it and then figure it out. So it allowed us to get that rapid feedback, that rapid response that built up a lot of trust, that built up a lot of product expertise, it built up a lot of resilience. And once we saw those pains go away, we saw that stability, it was like, okay, now we can go to another crop. Now we can go up a tier in orders of, gallons irrigated per valve. And then we had things break again. And luckily we have farmers that are, willing to, we're honest with them about the stage of the business. We're honest with them about what we're going to do if something goes wrong. We show up, we fix it. But yeah, we're now at a point where the resilience is added up, where we feel safer reaching further. But we're still not in Australia. We're still not in Italy. We're still not in South America. Why? Because what would you do if there's still unknowns out there. What would you do if something went wrong?
Yeah. And I'm sure that was a big concern as you're kind of getting your first customers. Like, look, irrigation is too important to screw up. So, now you have a track record. You probably benefit from some word of mouth in these new markets. But how did you get kind of those first growers to say yes?
I have no idea. Because we had 5 of the top 10 largest wine growers in our pilot cohort. The rest of them were premium growers, Spotswood. I can't even afford Spotswood wine when I'm lucky enough to be at a restaurant to see it. Why'd they do it? Well, this is something I think is unique to farmers. I just think farmers are incredible people, incredible community members They're very community focused. And when we said to them, we're in your backyard, we all live here, we're all part of the same community, we have a vision for working on a problem that we think could really help you. You seem to agree. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll irrigate it. I will. I did this. We still do this from time to time. We will stay overnight in a vineyard if we're doing something new. Like when we launch pump automation, like our PM lived in Paris Valley for like like in his car for a couple nights because it was just like we don't know. We don't know if it's going to turn off, and if it does, someone's got to be there and someone has to turn it back on. And like a couple times it glitched and turned off, and we were there and we turned it back on. And so like I think willingness to just do whatever it takes, and then like thank you to the farm community for just being that way. That's the way they said it too. It's like, you can do this, but if you blow up that thing, I expect to see you out here with PVC glue fixing it yourself tomorrow. And if you're not willing to do that, then get out of my farm. But if you're willing to do that, have at it, which is a very fun way to build a company and a very like commendable thing for farmers to do.
Right. Yeah. So I haven't had that exact experience, but I used to sell feed ingredients to dairies, and it was like, you can't run me out of an ingredient. I can't miss one feeding. I feed multiple times a day and I can't miss one. So it's either going to be delivered here or you're going to be delivering it yourself, because it's just that important. And irrigation, is the same way. So I could totally see that. And so you mentioned artificial intelligence before, and kind of the timing of this company kind of coinciding with some advancements in artificial intelligence that hadn't really hit the farm yet. One of the tropes about AI, for lack of a better term, is like it just keeps getting better and better and better. Does that hit your business, and can you actually improve your ability to deliver based on this iterative advancement in artificial intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. Front end, back end, support, every part of our company is touched by it now, and like I think it's 10% as touched by it as it should be. It's making major gains.
And how do you keep an eye on something like that when you're so laser focused on the customer? I'm amazed at small teams like yours, how you guys can kind of keep on top of everything.
I went away on pat leave in December, and I came back in the first week of February. And luckily, my wife, this is our third kid, so my wife's pretty good at taking care of the kid, and gave me a lot of moments of just like, get out of here, I got this, go away, go do something. So I actually got a fair bit of time to just like be on my computer, and I didn't open anything to do with Lumo. My goal was to finish this book that I was writing, a sci-fi romance, if you ever want to read it, and then play with AI. And like I wanted to build a website with AI, and it helped me edit some parts of my book, and I was just like, oh, what the hell? What are these tools? Like they had come so far, even in just 12 months. And I had like this rare window of kind of 4 weeks to just be fiddling and diving in. And I was like, I on February 6th, like, or 3rd or whatever the day was, I came back to the office and I just told every person like, this isn't about me or you. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm saying, I don't think any of us are going to be able to work again in 2 years to 5 years if we don't understand how to use this thing. It's that strong. Like, take me as a founder. Let's say I want to do one more startup, and it's 5 years from now, and I go to raise some money, and I have no idea how to use AI. I'm going to say to an investor, give me $5 million, and I'll use $1 million for this, and $1 million for sales, and $1 million to build my website, and blah, blah, blah. And there will be, at that time, a 20-something-year-old founder who's AI native who will be like, give me $100,000, and I'll do exactly what he just said he'll do. Give me $5 million and I will do 50x more, because I know how to use AI to drive SDR funnels. I know how to use AI to do almost all my basic coding. Like, it's not going to eliminate everyone. There's no doubt about it. Basically, if you know how to use AI, you're going to always have a job in an AI future. You'll be the one who can get that leverage. But I'll never raise another dollar again in 5 years' time if I don't know how to build companies with AI. And I think that's true about like a lot of roles. Like if you don't know how to use AI to leverage up your ticket handling part of your business, say you're a CS leader and you're like, oh, I pick 1,000 tickets a week. The only way you can think about solving that problem is, okay, one CS person can do 50 tickets a week. And so I need 20 people, because now 20 times 50, okay, that's how I'll need 20 people and I can handle 1,000. If you're not a CS leader who's like right now trying to figure out how you handle 1,000 a week with 2 people using AI, I think you just won't be able to work. So it's with that kind of urgency, it became pretty hard for the company not to work on it, because I was always just like, what did you do this week? Show our all hands during our all hands, it'd be like, what did you do this week trying AI to solve a problem? What did you do this week, product team, with AI to help the user better schedule? What did you do this week, engineering team, to help write code or edit QA with AI? And it was just like a show and tell all the time, and it has been since. And it's really just like, we don't have a plan per se, but it's emerging out of this urgency, and it's emerging out of this out of the fact that when you touch it and you use it effectively, you're like, oh man, I can't unsee that. I like, how do I go back, right? So I don't know if that answered your question well, but
yeah, more than answered it. I think it's really fascinating, and I love your kind of all-in approach. You see what's happening, and you're like, if we don't do this, we're going to be, left behind. And I think that's, it's cool. I don't know too many people in ag that are taking it that seriously. And so I think it's great to hear. It's a great message to have here on the show.
Maybe edit it out then, so that the competition doesn't. So tell them, let me do it again. Oh, AI, that thing sucks. I wouldn't even trust it.
Well, I mean, a lot of times what I get is like, oh yeah, Chat GPT, I asked it, what questions is Tim going to ask me on the podcast, or something solely benign like that. You know what I mean? And so like, anyway, I love how seriously you're taking it, because I agree, and I already feel left behind as a 43-year-old. Like, oh man, I need to.
Yeah, you are washed up.
Right.
This better work. This podcast better be.
I know.
Make you rich.
This better be my rocket ship right here. Seriously, it's something that needs to be taken seriously. Well, anything else you want to add or emphasize at all before I let you go? I really appreciate this interview. I'm excited to share the episode.
Well, I just want to say thanks to you for doing this podcast. It's been an awesome source of information and confidence for a long time, especially through the hard times, because it isn't just wine, like we work with apple growers in Washington, man. Well, is it hard up there? Like it's kind of hard everywhere for farmers right now. And they need as many people as possible investing to help them be more efficient, so that they can keep doing this amazing work they do and hold on to these amazing generational assets that they've built up. And yet the narrative around ag tech is like so bad, right? It's just like, I'm reading a lot of people that are like, is this a failed category? Like, venture should never invest here. It's not a venture eligible thing. And yet, like, venture's a critical way to build great, quick businesses, to build innovative, high risk businesses that can make big impact. And so I just think you being willing to tell the stories here and keep the positive energy around it and sharing the good news around us is, I don't know if you know how valuable it is, but it's really valuable to the whole ecosystem, and definitely to us at Lumo. So thanks.
Oh, thank you for saying that. And yeah, you definitely are bringing a lot of inspiration today. So I think a lot of people are going to benefit greatly from this episode. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you once again to Devon Wright for being on the show. Very cool stuff he's doing over there at Lumo. You can go check that out on their website, which is just lumo.ag. Also, shout out to Steele Roddick over there at Lumo, who does their marketing. Steele was one of the folks who set up calls with me during my break from this podcast earlier this summer. He gave me some really great feedback and led to ongoing conversations, and eventually asking him if he could connect me with Devon for the show. So thank you very much to Steele. Last but never least, thank you for your time and your attention. I really do not take it lightly. I'll be back next week with another story of ag innovation.